Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to take the opportunity to invite all military veterans to the seats located on the Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to take the opportunity.
Like many of you all, I grew up right here in Winchester, went to high school just right down the road, went up to middle school. It's now Baker Intermediate, but back then it was Clark Middle. But, you know, again, similar to you all, I probably walked or rode my bike up in your all, up and down your streets in Winchester, Kentucky. My grandpa and grandma lived right up the road here on South Maple. So this is the first time I've been back at this school ever since I left here in 2002. Which is amazing to think about the military, the journey that I chose, and why I chose to join the military and serve in the United States. Have been here. My math isn't too good, but it was about 23 years, 2 months, and 1 day from now, was September 11, 2001. Where was I? I was walking from the vocational building behind the old high school, from first period to second period, right behind the football field, when my friend stopped me and told me, "Hey, did you hear about this plane that just crashed into the building, one of the buildings in New York City?" And we kind of went on with our own day and didn't really understand what happened until I got home and there was no kids on the streets. Like it was, everybody was in front of the TV and you're watching the two twin towers of our New York City collapse, watching innocent Americans leap for their lives because that to them was probably the easiest and the quickest way out. Understanding what happened at the Pentagon in the fields of Pennsylvania. As a freshman in high school, again, just right up the road here at the old GRC, told myself that maybe this is my time. This is my purpose, to serve in the America's military. As a freshman in high school, I couldn't go join, but I had 3 more years to prepare myself to get ready. And, shortly after my freshman year in 2002, I moved to live with my dad in Virginia. It was right outside of Fort Lee, an Army base. So I got a chance to see a lot of the soldiers go in and out of the military base my dad worked on there, from the malls to around that area in central Virginia. And in 2004, December, I went through the MEP station at Fort Lee. I signed the papers because I was 18 years old, and I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Got my date to go to boot camp, and all I had to do was graduate high school. This took place 2 weeks after the Battle of Fallujah, the second Battle of Fallujah, which, 20 years here in the next couple of weeks, that we're honoring and remembering the sacrifice of those United States Marines and those soldiers that fought in Fallujah. But I wanted to deploy. I wanted to go fight. I wanted to make sure another 9/11 never happened. And I wanted to do my part. And I knew joining the Marine Corps and being an infantryman, they would send me over right away. On September 6, 2005, I was on the Yellow Footprints at Paris Island. And by September of 2006, I was on a plane headed to Kuwait on into Iraq. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to serve. I wanted to deploy. I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a plan C. My plan A was to serve 20 plus years in the Marine Corps, deploy as many times as possible. And you know what? When my time to retire, I'm just going to end up wherever. That deployment was tough. On average, the first 40 days, we averaged a casualty out of our company. A company of 200 Marines in a town of about 45,000 right on the Euphrates River. Every day that we went on patrol, we always wondered who was going to come back and who wasn't going to come back. But you look to the person to your left and the right, and you realize the true definition of love and brotherhood and connection. Out on the streets with our flak jackets and our Kevlars on, we were Marines. But when we were back in the fob in that building, not worried about anything around us, we were typical 18, 19, 20-year-olds. The age of, just a couple years older than some of you seniors in this room. But you know what? We got ordered every day. But again, it didn't bother us because we were those 18, 19, 20-year-olds, loving life, loving each other, taking advantage of the time that we had together, because we know when we step outside the line, outside of this base that we're at, we don't know if we're going to come back. And again, you learn to love somebody a lot more. You learn to understand the true definition and meaning of the word love and sacrifice. Because we dealt with it every day and we saw that. Our deployment kept going. The first 3 months was very, very tough. Again, a lot of sacrifices made by those Marines. And by the time right around Christmas and New Year's, it started, dying down. The engagements weren't as much as it was. A lot of times you go on patrol and you didn't have to worry about putting your weapon on fire. And it's like, okay, the work that we were doing over there was working. We were pushing out the bad guys. And the native people who live in Haditha, the native Iraqis, were going out and living their life. Interacting with the Marines, going to the markets. It was becoming a free town. We were doing the job, although it took a lot of sacrifice and we shed a lot of blood in that town. But we were doing our job. But I was just your typical Marine. I went on those patrols, I came back on those patrols, and nothing special on that deployment. But on January 18, 2007, this was literally a month before we head home. I actually called my uncle that day on the rooftop. He lives right here off Lexington Avenue. And I was like, hey, the deployment's starting to wind down. We're about to head out of here shortly. They're starting to talk about the next unit coming in to relieve us. I get off the phone, I go to the brief, step out on patrol, and then I find out 30 minutes later, I look down and I see a command wire in a ditch underneath that entered a pipe underneath the road that I happened to be standing on. That command wire was attached to an improvised explosive device. And there was a guy that was sitting in a building nearby waiting for a Marine to get close to that. And as I stepped on top of it, he pushed the button and it exploded directly underneath me. And as you can see, it removed both my legs. It sent shrapnel to both my eyes and other damages. To when I woke up 3 weeks later from a coma in Bethesda, Maryland, I found out that I lost a body's worth of blood. And of course, the amputations, the blindness, the shrapnel penetrating both my eyes. I thank the Lord every day because I don't know how I walked away. But I tell you what, there was a lot of angels on that ground with me. From the Marines and Haditha to the nurses, the corpsmen, the doctors. I got hurt on the 18th of January, and by the 21st, I was already in America. And they were taking care of me. They were putting me back together. But when I woke up from my coma to find out what my injuries were, I was devastated. I was distraught. This is not the life I want to live. I was either going to come home with my buddies or I was going to come home at all. That's what I wanted to do. And here I am laying in a hospital bed. What's a blind guy with no legs going to do? What kind of life am I going to live? And I was only 20 years old. Again, only a couple years older than some of you kids in here. My life just went from light to dark in a matter of seconds. And as I lay there in that hospital bed, just wanting to give up, wanting to quit, wanting to look at myself and be like, I don't want to live this life no more. Everything I wanted to do and the way that the Marine Corps was going, I was, starting to put in leadership roles. I was going to come home, I was going to get 3 more Marines, and I was going to be their leader, and I was going to take them to war, and I was going to bring them home safely to their families. Now here I am laying in a hospital bed. All that stuff gone. A lot of my story, talk about Veterans Day, a lot of my story is, yes, I did this and I've done this or whatever, but I would have never done anything if it wasn't for those people to my left and right. Those military service members, those veterans today that I call friends, that I call brothers, they were there with me throughout this whole journey. I had a chance to run into one this last weekend as he spoke at the Marine Corps birthday ball. When I was in that hospital bed, he was injured 3 months before I was hurt. He lost a leg. But when he found out that there was another fellow Marine that he served with in the hospital room bed, he made it a point every day to come in my room, to be with me, to share the ups and downs. Because I didn't know if I was ever going to walk. I didn't know if I was ever going to get out of a hospital bed, if I was ever going to get out of a wheelchair. But he let me know, he says, Matt, this is going to be a very long road. There's going to be so many times that you're going to want to quit, give up, you're going to cry, you're going to get emotional. But then there's going to be so many times that you're smiling, that you're putting one foot in front of the next, and you're moving forward. And you know what, at the end of the day, you are going to walk again. Because when you're put in those situations, when you're faced with all this adversity, the one thing to always do is to remove the negativity out of your mind. Because the only person that can fail at something is what you're thinking. If you believe you could go do it, then you could do it. And I realized that negative mindset wasn't what I needed to be in at that moment. And you know, for a blind guy, I felt like that light just flipped on in that hospital room and in my life. And I told myself, man, I can do this. Like, I'm not fighting insurgents no more. Yeah, I'm fighting these demons every day. I'm fighting these obstacles that I want to face every morning when I wake up. I don't know what's next, but I'm going to keep putting my foot in front of the next and moving forward. And I started getting better. I started getting stronger. And the ultimate thing that I learned through all this is that IED took my legs, took my eyesight, left scars on my body, but it never took the title of United States Marine. That's what kept me alive, and that's what kept me going in those difficult moments. And I told myself that, you know what, I want to do what my buddy's doing to me. I want to re-enlist. I want to continue wearing the uniform. I want to go in those hospital rooms and let those service members know that just because they've got some injuries, amputations, they're burned, whatever, they can still live life. Life isn't over. And you know what? Through all this, I can live a normal life. And as I'll share with you a little bit later on the normal life that I live. It's pretty amazing. But you know, I kept pushing through because I wanted to re-enlist. And I'm sure a lot of you all in this room deal with these kind of people in your life that, you know, they're the negative people. Hey, this is what I want to do when I graduate. This is what I want to do. And they're like, no, that's not going to work. You can't do that. You know, those are the people that you need to remove from your life. Because I had those same naysayers when I was going through rehab. Man, why don't you get out? You're going to make so much more money when you're a veteran. You know, you're done. Like, you don't have to work it ever. That's not the life I want to live. That's their life for me. It's not my life. And it's not the choices that I wanted to make. So I got stronger. I learned how to walk. When I was in San Antonio, when I was 2 weeks from being in San Antonio, I sat down with a friend of mine who was severely burned, over 70% of his body. His fingers were burned so bad he couldn't even open his Gatorade bottle. And he told me, he says, man, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you stay so positive, motivated, because I'd much rather be burned than blind. And that hit me then, and it sticks with me today because this guy has so much to be mad about, so much in his life he could give up and he could quit. But you know what? I've never seen that guy, I've never witnessed that guy come to therapy every day without a smile on his face, without a joke, laughing, having a good time. And I look at myself, that so many people in this world have it a lot worse than I do. What do I got to complain about? Yeah, I lost my legs, I lost my eyesight. So be it. This guy is my hero because he's living life to the fullest with a smile on his face and not looking at his injuries, but he's looking well beyond that because he's there to impact others. He's there to put a smile on their face. As I went through rehab, 2 weeks later I stood up on my prosthetic legs for the first time, and he was right there cheering me on, yelling as loud as he possibly could. 2 stories I'd like to share with you when I was going through those rehab moments is when I was in physical therapy, I would roll in my wheelchair, I'd get to the mat, I'd transfer over to the mat, I'd put my prosthetics on, I'd stand up, I'd walk out. I didn't ask any questions, I just did what I was doing. I did what I did every day. It's what they told me to do, so I did it. And you know, my physical therapist stopped me one day and says, Matt, you don't see this, but every day when you come in here, you got a smile on your face, you're joking, you're laughing, you know, sometimes they throw a ball at you, or whatever. But you know, like, but you come in, you put your legs on, you do what you're told, and you stand up and you walk out. You got these other amputees, these other service members going through their own difficulties at that moment, still probably trying to figure out what kind of life they're going to live, how's it all going to work out, are they ever going to walk again? And then they look at a blind amputee and it's like, hey, if he could do it, why can't I? Lead by example. You know, you don't have to be a vocal leader, you don't have to scream and yell at somebody. It's just what you do every morning when you wake up. First of all, being grateful to be on this side of the dirt. Just being grateful to open your eyes for another breath, to be here in America, to be living. That's what it's all about. And going to work, going to school, whatever you're doing, and whatever obstacle, whatever challenge is in front of you, going at it 100%. And you know what? Hey, if you're struggling at something, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out. You know, throughout this whole journey, as I mentioned, I wouldn't be able to live this life if it wasn't for those people in my corner, in my circle. You know, another story was learning how to walk. Like, again, I'm a Marine. I didn't think this would be very difficult. It's just 2 prosthetic legs. And, you know, I was bouncing off the left wall, I was bouncing off the right wall, I couldn't walk in a straight line, and I kept tripping over my own feet. My physical therapist stopped me one day and says, Matt, whatever you do, just put one foot in front of the next. And just walk. I'll never let you fall. He gave me the trust that I know that every time I put my right foot in front of my right in front of my left foot, that I'm going to be okay. You know, and you look at life, and I compare that to each step that I take. Like, we're not guaranteed tomorrow or next week. I almost lost my life on one wrong step. But I know that one wrong step going in a forward position is going in the direction that I wanted to go in. So take advantage of every opportunity that you get right now, today, and learn from it, live from it, and enjoy it. Because we're not guaranteed tomorrow or next week. Live every day as if it's your new day. And you know, throughout all that and what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish, on April 7, 2010, I re-enlisted in the Marine Corps. And they asked me where I wanted to go, and I told them I wanted to go to the Wounded Battalion because I wanted to be around those severely wounded. I had a chance to retire in 2012, and by that time, I started taking college classes. Come back here, I graduated from Winchester Kentucky in 2017. But you know what? Since 2007, when they threw me into the lake in Alabama as a blind double amputee and threw me behind a put me on a jet ski, I learned then that no matter what I got, what my injuries are, I can just go and enjoy life. I've done marathons, Spark races, obstacle courses. I've attempted Mount Rainier a couple of times. I've biked across the state. I just love to live life. Because as I mentioned, I almost lost my life on one wrong step. I was given a second chance to live life. And although that IEP, January 18, 2007, took my legs and took my eyesight, He gave me so much more. You know, yes, this life sucks sometimes. Yes, I wish I could open my eyes and see. But you know, I'm hopeful that I will see one day. But I want to keep living life like I've been living life these last 17 years. You know, going out, encouraging people, inspiring people to not, give up on life, but to stand up next to me and we'll walk this journey together. You know, as a veteran, one thing I've learned, from my time in the military is the leadership that was taught to me. And taking that out into these communities and, wherever I go, share my story, speak, it's just all about living life. It's all about making a difference and impacting someone else's life, putting a smile on their face, leaving them better than when you got to them. That's all it takes. And for a lot of the kids in here, being proud where you came from, being proud of your school. I heard a story one time from a friend that said that when he goes to speak to schools, he always stands in the hallway and he sees like a little piece of dirt or trash on the ground. He sees how many kids it takes to walk past that trash where somebody picks it up and puts it in the trash can. Like, I can't see this high school right now, but this gym seems pretty freaking big to me right now. And it seems really, really nice. Be proud of where you are right now and enjoy every minute. Because when I was in your position, I didn't think high school would ever end. And now looking back 20 years later, holy smokes, it's going by so fast. So enjoy every minute that you have right now. Take something from today. When you leave here, if you see a veteran just sitting wherever, don't be afraid to walk up, ask them their names, ask them who they serve with. That veteran's going to love that more than anything in the world. And you know what? You might be sitting there for 30 minutes to an hour because they're going to sit there and talk your ear off. But I can tell you one thing that I miss about my grandpa is those stories and lessons and the wisdom that he shared stuck with me. When I think about Veterans Day, I think about two of my favorite veterans, and that's my grandpa that I just mentioned, and also my father, who's an Air Force veteran. Two veterans that I look up to that look down on me right now from heaven, and they walk with me throughout this life. They're always with me no matter what. They were there for me in those darkest times, and they're with me for now. And I know I'll see them again one day. But you know what? If you have a veteran in your life, take advantage of the opportunities and the chances you had to sit down with them and hear their stories, listen to their work, listen to what they have to say, because you will learn so much more about life and how to live it. I appreciate you all so much. It's such an honor. I love being back in this high school. As I mentioned, Joining the Marine Corps was the greatest decision I ever made. But it all started here in 2001 when I was a freshman at George Rogers Clark High School. So it's great. I'm so blessed to be back in Winchester, Kentucky. You know, this is my home. I haven't lived here in 23 years, but it's forever my home, and this is where my journey of being a United States Marine began. So thank you all so much. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans in this gymnasium. You know, again, just go out and thank them, and sit down and talk with them. You'll learn something. So thank you so much. God bless each and every one of you.